Well, hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to create and lead a successful project team to deliver results on time, every time, plus 4 common but costly project mistakes to avoid. My name is Mark Johnson. I am founder of Intelligent Performance, and I'm so pleased that you could be with me today. I do have a lot of ground to cover, content to share with you, which I know you'll find valuable. But before I do that, I just want to get into some housekeeping things so your webinar experience is more effective for you. If I can get my screen working here, you should be able to see a control panel with the GoToWebinar. And in that control panel, as I've been experimenting with, trying to work and operate, in that control panel, you've got a few options that you can use. You can expand and collapse that control panel if it's in your way over the PowerPoints. You can toggle between full screen and window mode if that's more comfortable for you. And you can raise and lower your hand throughout the webinar if you'd like to perhaps ask a question or raise a point or something like that. And time permitting, I will unmute you and we can have a talk. We'll just see how we go with that. Probably the most important part of that control panel is where you can ask a question, where you can text that question to me. So you'll see down the bottom there where you can type your question in. I'll be able to see that, and if it's something we can answer and explain to the wider audience, we'll do so. Otherwise I can respond to you privately. So first up, what I want to do is check that everything's working okay. So how about we get maybe a weather check? If everyone can type into that control panel, into that question area or text area, how's the weather in your part of Australia? We've got some people from all over the country. So what's it like in your part of the world? If you can type in there, tell me perhaps where you are and what the weather's doing for you. Sunny and gorgeous, wonderful. Rockhampton's fine, lovely. Market's sunny. Okay, lovely. Cairns. What's that? Overcast, is it? Overcast but fine, beautiful. So we've got people in Cairns and Rocky and Brisbane and Perth. So we're all over the country, which is terrific. Paradise in far north Queensland. Of course it is raining, but it's beautiful. All right, so it's good. People can obviously use that and can hear me. So what we'll do is we'll continue on and get into a few points that I'm sure you're all here to hear about. So I guess for those who don't know much about Intelligent Performance, myself, many of you have I've worked with before, some I haven't. So let me give you a quick rundown on what we do. Primarily we offer practical, proven and step-by-step processes for rapidly developing teams, and today we're talking specifically about project teams, so that people are engaged and committed. That's the way we deliver results when you have an engaged and committed team. And we support clients in building highly productive workplaces and cultures. So be that in a project environment or a wider environment to really hit home and kick a few goals for people. How we do that? Well, we tend to facilitate, coach, consult, and speak or present, be that at conferences or in-house courses and presentations and so on. So that's a bit about what we do and how we do some of the things. In terms of the clients that I've worked with over the years, here's a sample of them. I mean, you may see your own logo there, but quite a broad variety, and I guess certainly different industries, from education, working through third parties, education and business schools, working in heavy industrial areas, aerospace, etc., as well as government and electricity and so on. So quite a variety of industries. Let's cut to the chase. What we're going to be covering today, quite a number of things really. We've got a fair bit to get through, so I'll probably whiz through reasonably quickly. and we'll see how we're going. Certainly, I would like people to ask questions as we go along, and I'll have some time for questions and answers towards the end as well. So I want to get very clear in terms of our systems and offerings and processes and lessons I've learned. Who's going to benefit from looking at the things that I'm suggesting people look at in terms of a system to get projects functioning effectively. To give you a bit of an idea about how I got to where I am at the moment in terms of putting some of this information together and go through that with you, there's, I guess, a bit of project theory to some extent that I'd like to go through in terms of getting people to understand what the key elements are for projects. We'll look at some critical lessons that I've learnt along the way, and I think many of you will empathise and you say, "Yep, that's happened to me," or "We've seen that going on around here." Some lessons for creating and leading project teams that deliver results, and some mistakes that people need to avoid. Then I'll certainly want to give people some time for questions and answers. And after that, I've got a few more resources that you certainly may find useful and want to take advantage of as well. And also, I guess, put in context this process that I talk about and touch points throughout the projects that you might be working on. So, I guess there's a really important point that I want to make, and if there's only one thing you take away from this webinar today, and that is this: in order to successfully complete projects, you can and you must adopt best practice in project management and focus on the development of your team and people. Okay, so when you're thinking about your project team, that may well involve people, employees who may be on the project full-time, they may be seconded to the project part-time, they may be external contractors, right? But I really want to hit home that point. And I guess that's my bent, that's where I come from in terms of my career and managing people. You can have the best systems, the best processes, the best technology, but if people aren't using them and following them and performing, you're not going to deliver what it is that you want to deliver. Okay, so let's move into who's going to benefit from the system that I'm talking about, and that is, I guess, threefold. Now, some of you are permanent career project managers, and you will get certainly some benefits from the content that we're talking about today. And I guess you might see yourself, if you're a project manager, now you might see yourself as the captain of the team. On a day-to-day basis. You're out there, you know the strategy, you know the game plan, you know what's got to be achieved, and so you're marshalling the team, directing traffic, trying to get people in the right positions to play to their roles. So what we'll talk about today will give you some key things, some key strategies, some key actions that you can take to better direct those people. If you're a program manager, and for those, I guess I'm making some assumptions here that people understand project management, but it's also the situation that you might be new to project management. So if you don't understand some of these things, please ask a question. If you're a program manager, and for the uninitiated, a program manager essentially is a role that manages a number of projects. Often they are linked to achieve some high-level outcome, or they could well be separate, discrete projects that manager is particularly looking after. So, as a program manager, I guess you certainly have a responsibility to manage that range of projects, and you're looking at acquiring the right resources across different projects. So are you using the right ones? Each of those can be impacting the organization. Each of the projects can be impacting the organization in a different way. And I guess, if I don't necessarily like using the sporting analogies, but maybe you're the coordinator of a World Cup event. So you've got all these teams, all these projects that need to come together to produce something for the organization. And of course, if you're from the HR, the L&D, the organizational change areas, there's certainly benefits in focusing on the content that we're talking about today as well. And in terms of knowing what areas to focus on, you need to understand how projects work and then where those various touch points are. And that's what I want to go through with you later on. Where can you have an impact, and how can you maximize that impact on this for the good of the project to help it succeed? So there's certainly some benefits in all areas in terms of the content that we'll be going through today. Now, how I got to this point. So we're back to the agenda. How I got to this point. Let me tell you a bit about my journey. No, that's not my lab border collie, but he's black. So this is the only photo that I could find. But it's a nice depiction of a journey that I've been on over the last while, and it will last a long time. For those who know me, you know, there's a few grey hairs there. So over the last 32 years, I've been working with people in various people-related roles: HR, L&D, organisational change, organisational development. Probably more so over the last 17 years in projects, and that's exposed me to a range of these lessons that I'll share with you. So the projects have tended to come from a range of industries, both in terms of government and mining, agribusiness, aerospace, and you saw some of those in the logos I had up in terms of the businesses that I've worked with. Finance and banking and legal industries. But that project approach, the work that I've been doing, has become more and more the norm, I guess, if you like. So it's been a case where, you know, thanks to those of you who are engineers or have come from that sort of environment, that production, that construction, that manufacturing environment. They're the ones that created this project management approach to work, and that's in all areas of business now, whether it be in HR or in finance or in IT. We tend to take a project approach to a lot of the work that we're doing. So, you know, I became more and more involved in these projects, and it certainly exposed a few things to me over the last while. Let me share some of those with you. Those lessons, or the problems that I started to see around the place. You know, most projects were late. I think the first project I ever worked on was in local government, and we had some external consultants come in, and they were quite structured in what they were doing, and it was a great approach. But was it on time? No, it was late. And I can name umpteen dozen projects, some which were horrendously late, that I'd been working on for quite large clients. Projects were over budget. Well, they were late, and we're still having to spend more money on it and get more resources, and people were panicking, or they weren't getting the right tools and equipment, or estimates hadn't been done correctly, so they were over budget. They were of poor quality, quality in the mind of the customer and the stakeholder. The scope creep, for anyone who's been involved in a project, doesn't matter in what area, what industry, I'm sure you can all relate to scope creep, where you start off thinking, right, this is what we're all about, and then over time, the thing just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And sometimes the schedule doesn't change, or the budget doesn't change, but you've still got to deliver a bigger, broader scope. Project team skill gaps. And that's one of the lessons I'll talk about later on, certainly, but the project team itself just didn't have the right skills to be performing the task, or it was taking them longer. Stakeholders weren't happy with the results that were being achieved. The project team itself were fatigued, particularly when projects are late and they're copying a lot of flack from the organisation. So there's fatigue within the project team, as well as fatigue throughout the organisation for the change that's supposed to be coming. And project team stability. Some projects I've observed and been on, it's almost like there's a revolving door. Team members come and go, and that's a real problem for continuity. So that's, I guess, some of the key problems that I saw around the place. And so what did I go and do? Well, to have an impact on organisations, which is my want, which I'm focused on that performance element, trying to improve performance. I wanted to to see some impact on that performance. So I observed some of the good project managers around the place. I also observed some atrocious ones in terms of learning what not to do. But there are some excellent project managers around the place who I started to observe. I researched some of those successful projects and the unsuccessful ones to find out what worked and what didn't work. Gain an appreciation for some of the project methodologies. And there are various ones around the place, and I'll refer to those in a little bit. Took a course in project management, so at least had some idea of what project managers I was working with were talking about, and also I could then go on to lead projects and parts of projects. Applied some teams theory and models to projects, which again is my strength and my background. You know, we've got a project team, we need it to perform, so what teams models can we use to improve? And identified a system and touch points, which is what I've been working on more of late, those touch points throughout the project life where I could make a difference. And that's brought about some of the key things that I've been able to do, and I started trying those out, and lo and behold, things started to improve. You know, there wasn't so much of the turnover, there was greater engagement, there was better performance from the people, and again I'm focusing here on the people side to it, be that of the team members themselves, but also that relationship with people outside of the project, the key stakeholders, customers, users, and so on. So go away, fill up the toolbox, and start to apply some of these things. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about was, I guess, look, it's a bit of theory for those who aren't across projects, and maybe it's a reminder for those who are. If you're a project manager, a program manager, or a portfolio manager, if you're supporting a project, here are some of the key things that you need to be focusing on, and these come from for those who are familiar with it, the project management body of knowledge. They could just as well come from something like a Prince 2 or an Agile methodology, both of which are quite popular. Prince 2 I know is used a lot in government. Agile methodology certainly gives some flexibility, but each and every one of them have their pros and cons. But there's some common themes, and these are the key areas or the key elements that need to be focused on. So first up, the scope. Big area. Although I'm going to show this in the shape of a pyramid. Scope sits there at the top because it guides all the project actions. So what is the scope? Are you working to scope? It will guide everything that fits underneath it, such as time. When you understand the scope, what's the time? What's the schedule that you need to work to? So when you know the schedule, you can end dates. That also includes what deliverables by what time, and therefore you can look at resourcing and so on. Finance and budget. Key area for a project. You can't achieve a heck of a lot if you haven't got the dollars to do something with. And if you know you're on a limited budget, are you going to be delivering a Rolls Royce when they really want a Mini? So understand the budget and what people are trying to deliver. Quality. Again, related to the preceding ones. And as I said before, there have been a number of projects I've worked on that haven't been able to deliver the quality. And that's been a point of contention in terms of, I guess, the user's mind. Have they delivered what the user wanted? Well, did you really understand that? Have you got that in the scope and the definitions of what's got to be delivered? Information and communication. That's both sharing information within the project with the project team, but also with key stakeholders. Risk management. Now, I think any project manager worth their salt will look at risk management, absolutely, but they really need to look at some of the less obvious ones, less obvious areas of risk management, and that's one of the things I want to talk about today too. Procurement. Have we got the right stuff arriving in the right place on time? Are contracts in place? And for some of you, if you're in that project role in larger projects, you may be fortunate enough to have a specific person looking after procurement and the contracts, or indeed a department or a team within the business that can handle that for you. Stakeholder management, we're getting to the foundational areas. Certainly stakeholder management is a key thing for projects. Stakeholders can be an enabler or a barrier to the success of your project. So you need to identify who they are and what their needs are. And the key thing for me is the people and their performance. And just as we've got scope at the top of this pyramid, at the very bottom is that foundation, the people and their performance. Have you got the right team? Are they delivering? Are they working? Are they doing what they need to do? Are you developing them? So I've used this pyramid, I guess, to really show that people are at that foundation. Okay. And whilst I've been through 9 key elements there is actually a 10th one that I want to focus on, and that's I guess it's the processes. Now these can align to the phases of a project or the stages of a project, depending on what terminology you like to use. But I'm not talking about those phases. I'm talking about processes in themselves. So there's that initiating phase, or that initiating process, where we understand more about the project, what's involved, getting the team together, setting up project managers, etc., etc. And then we're moving on to the planning. What's got to be in place? What everything from our schedules to resourcing, that's tools and equipment and perhaps accommodation or facilities, etc. Technology, software. We're moving from the planning into the executing stage. So we've initiated something, we know what's got to be achieved, we've got a plan together, and then we execute. We start to deliver, and whatever that may look like. It might look like construction. It may be going to site and building a particular asset for a client, or it could be the design and development of an IT system, or it could be conducting cultural alignment workshops, or whatever that may actually be. And the monitoring and controlling. So these are some basic functions of management anyway. But the monitoring and controlling, so particularly for a project manager, they are focused on those key performance indicators. Are we on schedule? If not, what have we got to do to get it back on schedule? Is it more resources? Is it a change negotiation, scope change that needs to be addressed, and so on? And hopefully, fingers crossed, things are done and we start to close out the project. And that is actually a point that I want to talk about later this morning as well. Some of the important things. Quite often, sometimes I've been on projects where people have just lost interest in the whole thing, and they've done the hard yards and they forget to close it out properly, which is a real problem. So across these different processes, these stages of management, we need to be mindful of those other 9 elements that I was talking about earlier, and include those in each of those phases where relevant. Okay. So there's as I said, a bit of theory to some extent of our projects and those the key elements that are involved. Okay. So I want to move on now to some critical lessons that I've learnt. And I know some of you will, as I said, recognize some of these. But so this is the stuff that I want you to be mindful of and think about what's going on in your own project. Is this happening, both in terms of the lessons and the mistakes? So what's happening there? What can you be doing about it to improve the situation? So the first one here is the brain surgeon paradox, as I call it. And that's, have a think about, if you, God forbid, you need open heart surgery and you happen to have a friend who's a brain surgeon. Now, this friend may do some mates rates for you. And look, that'd be terrific. But they're a brain surgeon. What do they know about heart surgery? Well, look, they're a qualified doctor. They must know something. But are they the best person to be doing open heart surgery on you? Are you going to trust them to deliver and to save your life? Yeah, well, probably not. So if we look at that in a work context, brilliant managers don't make the best project managers. So it's a temptation for managers who have the idea of a particular initiative or introducing an initiative throughout an organisation. They want to be the project manager, or they feel that one of their team, one of their managers who might report to them would be really good because they're smart, or they've got some great results in another area, so they should be able to handle the project. No, not always the case. So we need to choose a project manager who really does have that capability and is conscious of those elements that I spoke about before, and can manage the processes and bring it all together, as well as being able to lead the team. So they're both a manager and a leader, being task-focused and people-focused. Right? So that's the gift that you as project managers have. You know, when you're good at what you do, you can balance both task and people. So if you focus on getting the right people, well then, and the right manager, then they can start to set up the right team as well. When that manager is in place, one of the other things that I saw in some of the projects, both in terms of multi-million-dollar projects as well as smaller projects that I've seen around the place, is having a clear direction and planning. Those that worked well really nailed it. Everyone on the team knew what the direction was, what we had to achieve, and what the plan was, and what role they were going to play in that. So they understood the vision. Now, often we talk about vision in terms of a larger organisation, but if your project is impacting the whole organisation, yes, you may well have a vision for that, and at least needs to be aligned to the organisation's vision. Those successful projects involved all key stakeholders. They really understood who they were and what their interests were. As I said, understood in terms of the project team and the manager as well. They really understand what needs to be achieved and why that's important. You know, for a lot of things in life, for a lot about around managing change and so on, people need to understand the why to get engaged and get committed. So understand what's got to be achieved, why it's important, and how we're going to do that, and then be able to communicate it throughout the organisation. If your team members understand the why and what you're doing in a project, if they are then asked a question by a stakeholder, they are then in a better position to be able to give some of that clear direction. You know, I've in one government project we had a team member who really wasn't engaged in the whole thing, and he was openly, I guess, negative about the initiative, we were looking at some process improvement throughout this particular department, and he wasn't engaged because ultimately it did mean some structural changes, and he was negative within the project team, and as well as negative to stakeholders. So that was a real cancer, I guess, that the project manager had to deal with. And with that clear direction and planning, certainly I'd encourage you to involve the whole team in that planning, again, to get their buy-in for the project. And they may be in a position to see things. If you're sitting there as a project manager, they may be in a position to see things that you can't. Lesson number 3, manage the project scope. Yes, one project manager I worked with, she was just so focused on scope, really nailed it down tight. She cracked the whip on this particular project that I was working on and supporting, and everyone knew what was to be achieved, and the plan was able to fall out from the scope. So, and how she nailed it was by asking the right questions at the right time of the right people. So even before you're getting into any design elements of your project, what is that scope? Are you talking to the right people? Are you talking to your manager or a portfolio manager who has a particular idea of what the scope should be? Or should you be talking to key stakeholders, to users, to You know, who is it? Who really knows the scope and you know, is going to be focused on your project, right? So make sure you identify who are those people who can help you with that and ask them the right questions. Once you've got that, you set the boundaries. That's it. This is what's in, this is what's out. That's the important part with scope. So you don't get sidetracked on dealing with issues that are not within scope, because that takes time and resources. So you understand it fully, communicate it with your team, communicate to stakeholders, and pay attention to any changes. Now, I'm not saying with scope that, you know, we put a stake in the sand and that's it. We can't change it. As much as we would like that to be the situation, reality is that from time to time there will be some changes. So make sure that you're across those and the impact that those changes will have on you, and you work that into your risk management areas. And be firm on it. Be firm on it. So I guess that's a control thing as well. So if you have stakeholders coming to you and asking questions, what about this, what about that, I think this really needs to be included. Why aren't you dealing with this area or that area? Why haven't you, you know, you're building this asset over here, why aren't you also involved in this or that? You know, when you know what it is, what the scope's being set at, you can then say, well, that's not in scope, but maybe we can talk about that, we can negotiate something, but be firm. And if your team understand what the scope is, they won't get roped into those conversations as well. Right, let me just check in terms of some questions coming through. Oh yeah, Pam, okay, yes, do you consider opportunity with risk? I think you're talking about there about risk management. If not, please clarify. And yes, we do. I'll talk about risk management in a little bit. Okay. If you're talking about the risk of taking up an opportunity, then absolutely, in understanding what that opportunity is, you need to understand the risks involved and the impacts, and then make a decision. Well, do we take up that opportunity? What's it going to mean to the project, and how can we then deliver if that's a necessary thing to work on? Okay. So that's lesson number 3. Lesson number 4, bring on the A-team. And for those old enough, you may remember a show called the A-team, but that's not what I'm referring to here. It's really about the A-grade players in your organization. I guess to do that, to bring on the A-team, the project manager, on the basis that you've selected the right project manager, they understand the requirements. They can then bring on the sort of people who can deliver that. And so they need to be selected on skills, not just on who's available. And you know, I've in a few organisations, I've referred earlier to one business I've been working in. It's like a revolving door in terms of people who come and go on the project, and they come and go because they come from an operational area, and it's just their availability. You know, the project says, oh, we need a resource to do this, that, and the other thing, and the organisation looks around and says, oh, okay, well, who's available? Who's got some spare time? And you've got to question, well, why they got some spare time? They may be between projects, between jobs, experiencing a lull in activity, and that's okay. If they've got the skills, great, bring them on. But if it's just because they're available, they're not the sort of people that you need to have on the project. So think about the right people. Follow that. It's almost like a recruitment and selection exercise. If you're in that project manager's role, you know, you want to be interviewing people, talking to people, and selecting them to be part of your team. If you have that opportunity, and some of you, I know, are sitting there saying, oh, well, you know, I just take what I'm given. I'm running this project, and we have a pool of people to choose from. Yep, I understand that, and that can be really tough to deal with. But I would encourage you, wherever you have that opportunity, if you can say, look, hey boss, I know we've got you're recommending this particular person for the project. I need this skill set for these reasons, and if I don't get that, it's going to have an impact on the project. Well, then perhaps you can get some ideas of who else might be available and who you can talk to and select to be part of the project. And when you've got that team, that A team, make them an A+ team. Develop them, the group, into a team. So that's where you do the team development and team building, the common goals, etc., etc. So bring on the A team. Lesson number 5: stakeholder engagement and involvement. Yes, key thing. You can't operate there in isolation. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen where projects, they're locked away. No one really knows what's going on. We've set up this team. They're set in that part of that area of the floor over there in the corner, and no one really knows what goes on over there, not even the stakeholders. So to get them involved, you need to first identify who those stakeholders are and what their interests are, what their agendas are, because some stakeholders have some sometimes open, sometimes hidden agendas, what their power is in the organization. If they're a key stakeholder, do they have the ear of the CEO or the MD or your director or your portfolio manager or whoever it is who will be making some decisions about your project? What power do they have? Understand how and when best to communicate with them, and in what way. Is this stakeholder, do they like to be updated every week, or do they they trust what you're doing? They just want to be kept abreast of what's happening. Maybe it's a 3-year project, so just tell me every month, give me a bit of an update, send me a report, etc. Understand what's the best way to talk to them. Are they a charts person? Are they a numbers person? Are they a face-to-face, let's have a chat person? Get their feedback. You've really got to involve them. You've got to get their feedback. What are their key issues? How they think things are progressing at the moment with the project, particularly the longer, more drawn-out projects. What's working for them? What's not working for them? In line with that, excellent communication, both with stakeholders and the team. So know what to share, when to share it, why you're sharing it. One business I was in, as part of the change strategy, they communicated very early on what was happening, what the project's about, how it will impact people. So that's really from a change process. And it was good to see that communication coming out early rather than things being secret. But for you, if you're there as a project manager or a program manager, what are you sharing with your team and with the stakeholders? If you're there as the HR OD person, what are you sharing with the project manager with regards to their team? If you've got one of the team members who've come to you about an issue in the project, how much are you telling them, the project manager, that is? So that covers both internal and external communication. With your communication, we're getting back to communication basics of the timing, the relevance, and the wording of that communication. Who are you telling? When are you going to tell them? Make sure you're just telling them things that are relevant to them. Otherwise, people start to switch off. And do they understand? If you're in an IT project, don't talk in your IT jargon. Talk about or frame things in a way that people in other parts of the organisation can understand. Can you over-communicate? Can you over-communicate? A number of surveys that I've been involved with, communication always cops a hammering. Do people get told enough about what's going on in the organisation? They'll say, no, we don't. I've also experienced projects that do over-communicate and communicate too early. And that produces change fatigue where nothing has really happened yet. I'm sick of hearing about the changes. They haven't even hit us yet, and you're telling us all about it. And in that particular case, the project was delayed and delayed and delayed. So it just increased that fatigue. So be careful about that over-communication. Here's a bonus lesson for you. I said I was going to cover 6. Here's 7. Know and manage risk. So that risk element is key. It's one of those 9 elements that you need to cover off on. But focus on not just the obvious. Obviously, there's those that are part of those elements of finance and schedule, etc., etc. But what about the other ones of governance and some strategic alignment? What's the risk? Is this project actually aligned to where the organization is heading? If it's not, well, then people will start questioning why you are trying to achieve what you want to achieve. The risk with operations and business as usual. That's what BAU is, business as usual. Particularly where you have part-timers on your project team. Is there market risk out there? What if you've promised something to clients, a new communication system, a new way that they can get more information from you or process their payments or whatever it happens to be? What if that falls over? What's the risks involved in that? The legal, if you're constructing something where there's some indigenous issues, there's legislation in place for that as well, so that you need to be mindful of. Safety, culture, people, pay some attention to those. The last one there, the people, the personalities and difficult people. Now, is that a risk? Okay, an obvious thing with people is you may not get all the people on the team that you need, but what about the personality clashes? There's one business I worked with. I wasn't involved in this project, but the manager was telling me about a person who was just belligerent in terms of they weren't sitting in the project team per se, but they were supporting the project team and were somewhat critical in terms of and some input, and they just were belligerent in not producing what they wanted to produce or were required to produce. They had other agendas, other issues. So that's a risk. What if people don't want to cooperate? And with any sort of risk management, you need to understand those risks and put some controls in place. Okay, so there are key lessons. I'm just looking at some questions again here. The A-team. The A-team would be a nice case study of a project team. Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. Yes, maybe someone can volunteer to be Mr. T. Okay, so we'll move on. We've got our 7 lessons, our bonus one. The last point there about getting some input from experienced heads. If you're new to that project management role, talk to people. Those who've been there, done that before, get their thoughts on risk. So some common mistakes. 4 common mistakes that I've again observed on projects that I've been involved with. So our first one, project manager trying to do everything. I'm sure, there you go, raise your hands. Who's come across one of those sorts of managers before? Anyone? Just raise your hand. You click on the hand there. Yep, we got some hands going up. Click on the hand. Wonderful. So you have some managers around the place who you think, oh well, they are trying to do everything, and they're a bit of a control freak, I guess, if you like. So controlling everything and everyone, it's their way or the highway. Worked with one of those before as well, and it's so frustrating in trying to communicate with this person. They were so engrossed in doing things the way they wanted to that would take up time. They weren't allowing people to use their skills and help deliver results. They're poor delegators because of that control, and they micromanage. There's certainly some benefits to be gained from having a project manager who really knows their stuff, but they also need to know when to let go. So that's where that selection of the right project manager comes down to critical point. Have you got the right project manager? Who may not be the technical expert. Your project team can have a subject matter expert, a technical expert. The project manager is there to lead the team, be a conduit to stakeholders, represent the team, represent the project, manage tasks, keep it on track, keep it on schedule. They have to get other people to do that work. And yes, I know some of you are in projects where you say, well, there's only 3 of us and I've actually got to get in and deliver the work as well. Okay, understand that. So select that right project manager and provide them with support. If you're there from an OD or an HR area, what support are you and can you provide that project manager in terms of their skills, their leadership and their management skills? Are you giving them the support that they need? Mistake number 2, not managing the team members' performance. Yes. So many experiences here of project managers who, they'll I've been sitting there as the HR manager, they'll come to me and say, get rid of this person. Particularly in this particular organisation that I was working in, they project management was the way they did business. They had a large government client, and that's the way they would deliver their work. And I'm talking 18-month, 3-year projects, multi-million-dollar projects, and with 150 people on a project. So they just come to me and say, look, this person's not performing, get rid of them. Okay, well, you know what? Just as in any part of being a manager, you need to get on and deal with that. Make it very clear. If you're there as a project manager, make it clear what your expectations are. Get those clear from an early point. Build a relationship with your team members, so that people are quite happy to come to you and talk to you about issues and challenges that they're having, and they'll flag with you when their particular tasks aren't going to be delivered on time. Make sure you're providing feedback to them. This isn't any different from being a leader or manager in any other part of the organisation. Provide the team members with feedback on how they're going. What are you seeing is working well, and what needs to be improved, and develop the required skills through coaching and training. And again, if you've got a short, sharp project where they've got to have the skills, we're here for 2 months, we've got to get it done, you're probably not going to be putting a whole lot of training into them, right? But but if you're on a longer project, a more complex project, you may need to be providing them with some ongoing development, particularly where there are compliance measures. Again, another project I'm working on, they've sent a lot of their people off to finance training with some new processes and compliance things that need to be addressed, because it impacts certain parts of the project. Right? So providing the training that they need. Mistake number 3, ignoring business as usual obligations. Oh my goodness, that can even be a challenge for the project manager. If you are a project manager on a part-time basis, the boss had a great idea and say, oh, look, by the way, got a project for you to work on over the next 6 months, as well as doing your own work. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. So business as usual. Who's in that position? Who's involved in projects or supporting a project where not only are people trying to do that, but they have their day-to-day work they've got to do as well. Yeah, plenty of hands going up there. Yep, excellent. So don't ignore those business as usual obligations. But what do we do about them? Well, I guess it's a case of first up, accept that business has to go on, and your stakeholders will expect that to be the case. But they also want you to deliver your project. But business must go on. Okay. Given that, who have you got on your project? Are they part-timers? Are they full-timers? Are they external? So that's a real challenge for people who just kind of float in and float out. They're permanently on the project, but you've only got them for 1 day a week, or three half hours, or whatever it happens. Oh, sorry, 3 half days, or whatever it happens to be. And put yourself in their shoes as well, because they have 2 bosses, right? For those people who are seconded to a project on a part-time basis, and they've got their daytime boss who's screaming down their neck to get work done, as well as the project manager who really needs key stuff done as well. So where does their commitment lie? Well, I guess you want it to lie in both camps, don't you? You need them to do the work for the project. And sometimes that means you need to negotiate. But if you can't negotiate on things you don't understand, so as a project manager, you really need to get in and understand, find out what their stresses are, what their boss for the part-timer, or for yourself, what are the priorities that your boss has for you in terms of operational business as usual stuff. So you need to get in and understand that, and be able to plan and schedule around that business as usual. I think that's part of risk management as well. You need to, if you understand what the business as usual requirements are, and that's where you as a project manager need to stand firm. you know, yes, boss, we have this, or yes, client, we have this project to deliver, but there's also these other operational constraints, which means we might have to push the timeline out a bit, or we're shorter on resources, or we might have to, if you still want us to meet that timeline, we need to get external people in, external resources and so on. So negotiate that resource availability, and you make that very clear. Maybe even get it in writing as to when you can get hold of resources and plan around that. And when you've got the resources, engage and motivate the team members. You know, how do you engage people in your team? Well, you bring them into the planning, into the direction, making sure they understand what you're trying to achieve, making sure they understand what their role is and how important that is, and the what's in it for them. What are they hoping to get out of being on the project? Sometimes that's a real bugbear for people as well. You know, I've got all my other work to do, and now I'm working on this damn project. Okay, well, let's have a talk about that. How can we, one, take away some of that pain for you as that team member who has other commitments, but also help achieve the project, and be supportive of them and for them. Okay. Mistake number 4 of our 4 mistakes is poor project wrap up. So we're getting to the close of a project, and yahoo, you know, there's a bit of excitement. We're coming to the end, but there's also a bit of relief as well, particularly for longer, tough, complex projects. And there's fatigue. So sometimes there's a temptation for people to want to, you know, jump ship early, particularly if they have to find another project to go to. So it's important that you pay some attention to that project wrap up, that it is all closed out very well. You know, we dot the I's, we cross the T's, we close out the plans, we conduct or hand over all the deliverables, and we review the project performance. We conduct the lessons learnt, meetings and debriefs, to make sure it's all handed over and closed off nice and neatly. And I guess to some extent, you know, some of those projects may well go on, or you're handing over to the next team. You know, maybe you're part of the design and development team, and you've got to close that piece out and hand it over to the implementation team. Okay, that's fine. You still need to cover off a lot of these elements as well, and right through to with the lessons learned. I come across time and time again. You know, new projects start up, and they really don't have an understanding of lessons that were learned on previous projects. So make sure all those lessons are documented and they go into some repository for those lessons and issues logs and so on. Transitioning of team members. Wow, is so important. If you're there as a project manager, and I would encourage you to get HR to help you with this. What are team members doing? Are they going to transition to another project? And if that's the nature of your business, that's for any HR person, you understand the headache that can cause as well when you're responsible for, you know, the workforce planning and so on. But quite likely you've got people who have worked on a project, if they've been there full time, who actually don't want to go back to their old job because they've got a whole lot of new skills. They've been challenged and they want to find something different. So, okay, we've got to manage that to keep them happy. Otherwise, they may well exit the organisation. And celebrate. You know, that's the closure thing. Make sure you celebrate the end of the project. Thank people for their job well done, as well as the celebrations along the way, of course, too. You know, don't leave all your celebrations till the end. People want to feel appreciated and acknowledged for their work along the way, but make sure at the end of the project there is a celebration as well. And my bonus, there was a bonus lesson. I've got a bonus mistake for you as well, because I kept thinking of mistakes that I've had observed around the place, and that's the do-it-yourself approach. And by that, I guess we're talking about people knowing when they're out of the depth. You know, anyone. Oh man, the picture there is something that's you know, they've tried to patch a leaky pipe. And anyone who's tried to do some of that stuff around their own place, I'm sure can relate to that as well. You know, you tend to take a whole lot longer to do things. You know, when you're not the skilled person, and you think, oh well, we haven't got the resources, we haven't got the money, we haven't got the time, I'll try and do it myself. You can save so much time and pain if you get people in to help you. So seek help and support. So a message for the project managers: go to HR, go to OD, go to L&D. If it's a people issue, to get help and support. If it's a performance issue, don't flick past it or handball it to them and make them deal with it. But ask for their support and advice. Go to your manager. Go to subject matter experts. Get external resources in if you need them. Learn from these people so that you can build your skill set as well. And stick to the things that you're good at. Just like anything, if you're there as the project manager, obviously you have some good skill sets. Don't get sidetracked into doing things that someone else in the team could or should be doing, or an external person could or should be doing. Right? Stick to the things that you know. Okay, so they're our mistakes. So a quick sum up of those elements and mistakes and lessons. Make sure you understand and manage all the elements. Right? What are they? What do they mean? How important are they? And what impact do they have on the project? The integration of the processes is key. Right throughout the different phases of a project, it's the management functions, the planning, the organising, the controlling, the monitoring, and so on. Make sure you're doing all of that across those different elements. Remember, people are the foundation, and that's my take on it. But as I said before, you can have all the great systems, processes, technology. If people aren't following it, doing it, capable, skilled, you're not going to deliver. Appoint the right project manager and support them. Message there for the organisation and HR. What support can you provide people? Appoint the best team. Absolutely. Develop and manage their performance, because they're the ones at the end of the day you're going to be saying thank you as a project manager, that you'll be saying thank you to, and that they've delivered the job. That clear scope, direction and planning, make sure you understand all of that, because that sets up the project plan. It sets up your resourcing. It sets up the timelines, your finance, your budgets, and so on. Make sure you're really across that. Manage the risks and allow for that business as usual component. Engage all the stakeholders and communicate. And another thing, communicate. So with those stakeholders are sometimes you might think they're endless. They're your team, they're your manager, they're the project sponsor, they're the steering committee, they're the customer, the client, the landowner, the unions. Understand who they all are and communicate well with them. Have a clean wrap up. That's the close out of the project. Dot the I's, cross the T's. Do the lessons learned. Make sure it goes into issues a log for future projects and so on. And lastly, don't try and do everything yourself. Okay, so they're our key sum ups, I guess, to a certain extent. So I know we're close on time here. So questions. People got questions that they'd like to have answered. Just check our panel, what's coming through for us. As a business, workers are not knowledgeable in project management. Challenges they need to do business as usual, project work and professional development to gain P3. Yes, okay. Yeah, look, I guess is certainly educating people in project management is a key thing. They really need to understand that, and whether they get that professional development and accreditation. There may be other ways of providing that to them as well through just internal coaching and so on. Thanks, Eliza. So we've answered some questions along the way. Any other questions at this stage? Okay, let's. I guess after that, I do have some more resources. I understand we're up to our 75 minutes, and that's what was scheduled for the webinar. If you've got what you wanted or what you came for, more than happy. If people need to go off and do their other things, I appreciate that. But for those who are happy to stick around, look at some resources, I'll go through those now with you as well. So feel free at your discretion. So more resources to help you, give you a bit of a helping hand. So I wanted to cover off with you where we fit in with our intelligent teams. Now, up the top here, you'll see a typical project process, and I'm saying, look, it could be a PMBOK or a Prince or a Agile. Let's not debate that, but these are the typical sorts of phases of a project, if you like. And when I look at the different people things that go on in a project, we can say, well, first up, the project is identified, and we select project sponsors, we agree the project proposal and understand what's going on there. Steering committees are set up, project managers are appointed, scoping, project teams put together, kick-off meetings are held, roles, responsibilities, etc. And the project manager gets on board and starts doing their thing, leading and managing the project. The project team kicks in to undertake their activity, and that might be constructing, it might be designing and developing, analysing, whatever that happens to be. At some point, perhaps, if it's a new system that's being implemented, there might be a sub team put together, a training team that's assembled to roll out some training for the organisation. There's some readiness assessments that might be conducted as well, and then towards the end of the project, there's that transition that I spoke about earlier, that people need to transition back to their workplace. So essentially, where I see us fitting in to that sort of a timeline, a project line, is that we get in and we help projects understand the people needs, and that's best done early on. What are the needs in terms of people, both with respect to resources and skill sets, personalities, and so on. We'll support projects in selecting the right people. Get involved in that selection process if need be. Develop and support the team in terms of them coming together right from the kickoff through to their ongoing development, and support the project manager as well with being able to manage performance, communication, all the leadership and management skills that a project manager may need to utilise and grow and develop throughout the life of that project. And then we'll come back and support the transition of people off the project. Right. So what that might look like, if we go back to that diagram, is, and these are the touch points that I referred to very early in the webinar, the things that I found started to work and where I could have an impact on projects. And yes, these are those touch points. Some input here in terms of that project proposal regarding the development processes and budget. If you've got a project that's going to be together for 18 months, okay, what's the development needs of that project team along the way, and how's that going to impact the budget? So, as I said earlier, get in and support the selection of project managers and the team themselves. Importantly, there's this kick-off meeting that most projects will have, and that's where I tend to take teams through a rapid project team development workshop. So really getting them focused on who we are, what we're about, where we're heading, how we operate as a team, what our ground rules are, etc., etc. So getting that team up and running. Look, there's opportunities to impact the success of a project team by really clarifying those roles and responsibilities. So we'll document those for projects. Make sure everyone is clear and understands those. Some of those will come out of kick-off meetings, some in other ways as well. And provide that ongoing project manager with the coaching in terms of leadership and management. And that's in a program, the Effective Project Leadership coaching framework that I use. And facilitate, as I said, that ongoing training for the project team as they go on. Maybe it's about group decision making or project team communication or how to run their effective project planning or project review meetings and so on. What I tend to do is have a lot of tools that we use as part of our systems and processes, be they other people's tools like team management systems or our custom surveys and diagnostics for particular projects. So that's kind of how we fit in with projects and ensuring that they make the most of the team that they've got. So why look at intelligent teams? Having people engaged who know what they're doing and are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, that's the foundation of that team's success. I started off this webinar about how do you get a team to deliver on time every time? Well, it's the people. Do they really know what they're doing? Do they have the skills, and are they being allowed to do it and being managed appropriately? We give the ability to manage performance to project managers. Knowing how to deal with performance issues is part of our system. And reiterate that you can't do it all yourself. Project managers and HR have a lot to do already, and if you've just been landed with another project, you've got other stuff that you need to work on. Okay. So we use those systems and processes that are proven to deliver real results. Where I've used these systems with other projects, you can see the engagement of the team just change overnight. After some of the workshops, you can see the better decision making that comes into play. You can see better communication that's happening. Customize the projects or the systems to meet the client needs. If you need a team up and running ASAP, quick as possible, okay, that's what we work to. If you've got a team that's going to grow and evolve over 2 years, well, that requires a different approach. So we can work on that as well, and provide lots of extra added value. It's a case where a conversation doesn't cost anything. It's hey, ring Mark about this or that. We might run a workshop, we might provide some coaching, but we know that you can't cover everything off in those, and we're not going to charge you to say hello to us. Pick up the phone, let's talk through something, let's give some advice, see if we can improve the situation that your project is facing or that you're supporting. So I guess what I'd like to offer, and in the information that was sent out, this is not a sales pitch. This is the only offer that I make to people. So if you are interested in finding out more about what we do or how we could help support a project that you're working on, or that if you're from an HR area that you're supporting, and you want to take advantage of this, let me know. I can offer you a freebie 30-minute meeting or discussion to explore what's working, what's not working on particular projects. From that, I'll give you some recommendations to help improve the performance of that project team. Some of those recommendations, I'll make sure that they are things that you can do for yourself. It might be you as the project manager, or as the HR, OD, L&D support person. You'll be able to undertake some of those recommendations, or others you might want us to come back and facilitate. So there's certainly something in it for you as well. If you're based in Brisbane, for some of you, I'm happy to do those meetings face to face. If you're outside of Brisbane, look, we can Skype, we can use a telephone, we can do whatever we need to do to have that discussion. All right. So if you are interested, I've got a bit of a guide there. If you want to have a meeting, just type "meeting please" into that webinar text question box. Now, you can do that now, or you can email me. Particularly if you're looking or listening to this on a replay, you can just email me direct. So if you want to have a meeting, doesn't cost you anything. You get some recommendations out of it. I'm more than happy to do that. All right. So any final questions before we wrap it up there? There's a couple of comments, a couple of meetings, please, coming through. So what I'll do is, for those people who want to have a catch up, I will contact you over the next couple of days to set up a time and place when we can meet and go through that with you. All right. So I can see. All right. Couple, 2, 3. Meeting please. Meeting please. All right. I will give you guys a call. Thank you. Okay. What I'll do is I'll just unlock that. I will make a replay available for people, and you can go through that again at your own space and time. I guess in watching that replay, what I'd encourage you to do is have a think about what's working and not working in your project. What can you do about it? Some of you may be familiar with this sort of a process, the stop, start, continue. And then what do you need to do to make that happen? What do you need if you want to stop something? How are you going to stop it happening? You know, if you want to stop the poor communication or start better communication, what do you need to do to make that happen? And set a date. So I'd encourage people to do that anytime you come across some new information or valuable information. What are you going to do with it? Stuff you've heard today, what are you going to do with it? Start, stop, continue. Come up with an action and set a date. All right. So folks, that pretty much wraps it for me. Thank you so much for your participation. I will get a link to everyone to a replay out to people. So that'll be over the next 24 hours. I'll get that link out to you and access to slides as well. So thank you again for your time participation today. I hope you've got something out of it and hope to meet and see you again. Thanks guys. Bye bye.